Hello, my name is Danny Lee. Welcome to this virtual Q&A for the Devil All the Time. As you can see, we are many and we are scattered around the world. For some people, it's very early in the morning. For some people, it's much later in the evening. I'm going to introduce everybody here. So we're joined, it's a pleasure to introduce Tom Holland, Bill Skarsgård, Jason Clarke, Sebastian Stan, Hayley Bennett, Harry Melling, Eliza Scanlon, Pokey Lafarge, and co-writer and director Antonio Campos. Now everyone is, I'm going to make sure that everyone has their say and talks about their experience making this extraordinary film. But I'm going to come to you, Antonio, first. For people who don't know, the film obviously starts as a book by Donald Ray Pollock. So I'm curious about your relationship with that book, and specifically, I guess how quickly you saw this as a film. I mean, was this a eureka moment where 5 pages in, you are seeing the images play out, or do you have to sit with the book a little longer? Does it take a little more time for this to become, in your mind, a movie?
So the book was given to me by Randall Poster, who's a producer on the film. And he said, I love this book and I think this would be a great movie. And I read it right away. And the thing that jumps out at you about the book is that it is very cinematic, and it's just filled with all these really rich moments and really beautifully rendered characters. And there's a vibe to the book. Like there's a really distinct vibe to the book that caught me. I knew that I wanted to write with my brother, and my brother is not a screenwriter. He'd never written a script before, but he'd written prose, and he had the same love for this genre as I did, and he read it and loved it. And right away we knew we wanted to make a movie.
How tricky is it in that case to translate a book that you have fallen in love with, into a script? Because, by necessity, the film is going to be different. There's going to be less of it. There are going to be scenes in the book that you're going to have fallen in love with, which just might not work on the screen. So how tricky was that transition for you to know what to leave aside?
There were some things that were just obvious that we knew that we couldn't do. And then there was other things that were trickier. It was really about trying to find the essence of every character and trying to capture that in a limited amount of time. And and at the end of the day, Don Pollock, who's the author of the book, who's really involved because he's the narrator of the movie. His response was the one that I was so nervous about, and I got it over. It was a Christmas Day last year, and I was really nervous because I hadn't heard from him, and I knew he had the movie. And he wrote to me a day after Christmas, and he said, "You knocked it out of the fucking park," and he was so excited about the movie. And what he said about the movie is that we caught the spirit of the book. And that was our goal. It was like, we just want to capture the spirit of the book. We don't have to make it exactly like the book, but we just have to capture the essence, the spirit of it. And I think that we did a good job with that.
And for people watching who might not be aware, I mean, you involved Don Pollock, into production, didn't you?
Yeah. Don had read drafts. Don is a narrator, obviously, and he had read drafts, and then he came to visit set, and he had recorded all the voiceover before production started. So we had all of it to work with during the assembly.
And you mentioned co-writing with your brother. You were obviously turning the script around at one stage of the process, and then at the other, I think your wife, was involved in the editing of the film as well. I mean, is this just because these are the people you love to roll with as a filmmaker? This is your team, or was there a kind of echo between these family relationships and these kind of generational relationships playing out on screen, and something going on behind the camera as well? Was there a deliberate kind of echo going on?
I mean, I guess there was a total madness by working with my brother and my wife, and my son, who played young Arvin. But it's funny that you said that. Yeah, there's some sort of obviously closeness and comfort that comes with working with your family in a way, and also a great deal of turmoil and chaos and confusion and working on the edit of this movie. This is actually the room first cut of the movie. So we came to this very isolated place to edit, and my wife and I would say was a very lovely, wonderful experience. But also, this is one of the trickiest movies to edit. It's a puzzle, and and it's frustrating doing puzzles sometimes. And so, but I think that because it is family, it always feels like you're in a safe place, you know.
I kind of want
And
to dig
also,
into that
totally
editing process.
completely immersive.
I want to dig into that editing process because we have many of the puzzle pieces, here with us today. You mentioned the young Arvin, obviously. Tom, you're the slightly older Arvin. I wanted to get your take on the character because it feels like we are clearly in very dark and difficult times on many levels. The Devil All the Time. It's a dark and difficult film about dark and difficult themes. It felt when I was watching the movie like Arvin is the glimmer of optimism. Arvin is the shot at redemption. I mean, is that how you felt about him as a character? And if it was, I mean, how tricky is that to play a theme, to play the one shining light in this very dark story?
Yeah, I always kind of looked at him like this just innocent little kid who was growing up in terrible circumstances and in a terrible place. He definitely is the kind of glimmer of hope or the glimmer of light in this film, in the sense that he's just always trying to do the right thing. It just so happens that in this film, doing the right thing means killing people. So yeah, I mean, it was an interesting thing for me because it was a bit of a leap of faith, and I had to put a lot of trust into Antonio because this is not the type of movie I've typically made in the past, and I got to say, like, I was really nervous and scared, like, coming on set for the first time because I didn't know if I had it in me to play this type of character, and I was really lucky to have the cast that we have to support me and to have Antonio as the director, as our kind of captain of the ship. Because yeah, he is a really complicated character and it is very dark, and I had to kind of go to places mentally that I didn't know I could go to or don't think I ever want to go to again. But it was an amazing process, and I've seen the film and I'm very proud of it, and it's something that I'm really, really eager for people to see and to enjoy.
And I had a question for kind of you and Bill together, actually, which kind of reflects on that generational aspect of the story, because obviously you're playing father and son, and the relationship between you is, it's pivotal to everything that happens. But you might not necessarily, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you might not necessarily have been on set at the same time, and you don't share the screen. So I'm wondering how much you talk to each other, actually, in these two portraits of characters at completely different moments in time.
I mean, we spoke a bit, didn't we, Bill? We went for a few dinners and stuff before we started shooting, and then we were staying in the same hotel, and we'd hang out.
Yeah, I think you and I were like some of the first to get out there in Alabama, I think. So it wasn't like the full cast wasn't there at the start. So we tried to spend some time, get to know each other, and but we did like sort of a quick read through as well, didn't we?
Yeah,
and we were like,
did,
we kind of worked it out a little bit, and Tom was reading young Arvin's lines with me to just kind of get those words out there, obviously, because it happened to him when he was a kid in the story. So yeah, and it was nice spending some time, and also just we talked to I remember with Tony as well to kind of figure out if there's some mannerisms and things that that you kind of feel that this is because so much of the story is the just generational thing of what is passed on through from father to son. So yeah. And then I think the only days we had on set together was like literally passing through, right?
Yeah. I was like, I wrap. I'm like, see you later, buddy.
Because you finished earlier before I had really started shooting, and you're like, hey, good luck with this one, man.
Buckle up, bro. You're about to go places.
But yeah, I was really curious about that, Bill, specifically because Willard is a character who, like everyone in those kind of first moments of the film, I mean, his decisions then echo right through dramatically until the end of the film. Does that affect your performance, or are you thinking about your performance being, you're in this kind of 20-minute film within a film, or are you thinking, I'm still there spiritually, over 2 hours later?
Yeah, I mean, of course. That's a thing that I love with the script and the book as well, which is it's kind of it might be great for Netflix for that reason, but like that the fact that it's telling chapters, so you have all these different short films almost or short stories that have this red line kind of tying it all together. But yeah, it was great. Like I dealt with that like Willard's story as if it was just his story because obviously his story ends. But yeah, and then understanding what I think what was great watching the film was that I had I had the scenes with Haley obviously, and little Banks, who played a young Arvin. But I hadn't seen, like, this is such an amazing cast of people here that I kind of, got to meet and spend some time with, but I didn't see them do their scenes. So it was great watching this movie and see what a great job Tony did to kind of just put it all together. And it's like, oh yeah, we fit in to this movie like we're part of this very fucked up, destructive family somehow.
Jason, let me come to you. I mean, Carl is a character who's actually there from beginning to end. We meet him early in the film. He's still there, at the end of the narrative. He's a monster on so many different levels. And I'm wondering for you, as the actor playing him, how easy a character he was to take off at the end of every day's shooting. He feels like someone who might have got under the skin a little bit, or did you just shrug him off?
There's a lot of mints to get rid of that cigar. There's a lot of, washing to get rid of those dirty clothes. It's not somebody you really, no, you've had enough. I mean, when you're chasing some dude naked through a forest, you're really depending on, your cameraman, your other actors, your director to just, let's not do this for a week. You know what I mean? Let's not do this all day. Let's just get in there and get this, because it's you're feeling for the poor lad on the ground with his, pine needle rash all over him. And at the same time, it's quite funny to look across at Riley and just think, like, there's just some great, there's something very enjoyable, the scene with Harry and that in the car. There's a great absurdity to it, which is light and wonderful. But yes, it requires a clean under the fingernails job afterwards, because these people are living very hard lives. As well as good, bad, and we want to judge them, but they're living very hard lives and eking out some measure of meaning, whatever that is for the audience, that is, I guess, noble in its own way, but pathetic in its own way as well. There's a lot of juxtaposition in, I think, all of these characters. Bill and Tom's characters start off with a war hero creating, his worst moment of his life in a moment of mercy. That opening, picture of a man, who's fought his way through the islands of Japan and finding one of his own crucified to a cross and flayed, and he does the noble, decent thing, but it's soul destroying, and it's there at the very end of the movie when Tom's character goes back to it. It's never left any of us. And I think, to answer it a long-winded way, that's kind of it. There's something very enjoyable and funny and absurd and kind of, a great thing when these parts and these roles come along and somebody decides to make them, like Antonio and Netflix. And there's just something like, what? I'm happy for a nice warm shower at the end of the day.
And I'm curious, actually, it's a question for you and Antonio about actually on set, whether, Antonio, were you aware of that with Jason? Were you aware that Jason clearly, this great, very experienced actor, but is also going to be going through some pretty interesting psychological stuff unavoidably? So is there a sort of particular relationship between the two of you on set where you have to be aware of that, and you have to be aware that Jason is going to very dark places?
When you say dark, I don't think it's, just to qualify that, I think it's just, you don't want to be doing a marathon every day in terms of not just the length, but in terms of, it's rough, it's rough on everybody there, I think, and so it's just, it's the ability to fire when you need to fire, get your ship ready to cross the line and go, because, that's the way you want to play it.
Yeah. And I mean, from my perspective, I'm just, as a director, you want everybody to be comfortable and happy. But when you're playing roles like this, you're directing roles like this, you have to know that the actor is getting into a weird, dark place and allow them to be there and have, you're interacting almost at times with the character. But again, to Jason's point, it's like, the day is long and there's a lot of moving around, and, it's not like you're doing 150% every take, and you're also looking to balance it out by going to someone else and giving the other actor a break off camera or whatever it is. There is a consideration there.
And you also want what you want.
They'll run out of steam and need a little bit of a reset or reboot. So yeah, but also, you know, at the you kind of like, it's exciting, you know, it's exciting to be interacting with someone who's kind of in two worlds at the same time, you know, and every once in a while you know, like Jason might speak to me as though he were Carl, and it's kind of surprising or jolting, but I think it's also like really exciting because, you know, you got this electricity to work with.
Before we pick things back up with the actors, I mean, I have one sort of question about casting, which we're seeing this amazing cast here in our gallery. When you're casting, are you almost seeing a gallery like this in your mind, or are you casting each part individually, or are you thinking about how this ensemble is going to work and people are going to spark off each other, almost like you're kind of, I don't know, putting together like a band or an orchestra?
You just go one character at a time, and then you start putting the pieces together, and you have a big wall. I think every director does this. Every production has their big wall of headshots, and then they put it all together, and then you start to see how it all fits together. And that includes, you know, the person that says one line in the diner, or, you know, the person that walks by and just gives someone a look. If you cast everything, you kind of really start building out the world, and you have all these headshots together, and you get a sense of it. But really, you're focusing a character at a time.
Haley, hi, let me bring you in. I mean, I think I'm right in saying that you're pretty much unique among the cast, or the cast that we have here today anyway, in having spent a lot of your childhood in Ohio, in kind of, you know, in these sort of rural areas. I'm wondering, did it feel like you brought a particular insight and understanding to the film in that case, you know, kind of coming from worlds which may not have been that different to this corner of the world?
Well, it is funny because I think I'm one of the only Americans in the film, despite the fact that it is, yeah, set in Ohio. But I mean, sure. I guess it was a kind of not to that kind of extent. Obviously, this is a very heightened perspective of the world of Ohio. There goes my phone. So sorry, that's my dad calling from Ohio.
You planned that, right? That's supposed to happen.
Yeah, and it is a part of the world that I'm particularly interested, not because I'm from there. It's just I live in England now, which is so I'm about as far away as possible. But I mean, I just connected with the story. It's kind of like Arvin in Wonderland. Arvin in this kind of twisted, dark, wicked Wonderland. And I was really excited about the idea of playing this character, Charlotte, because she's innately good and warm and kind-natured and a caretaker. And she was someone that was sort of really trying to make the most of her circumstances, someone that takes pride in what she has, even if it's not that much. And those are kind of archetypes of people that I recognized from Ohio. I guess she's a woman that dreams of a peaceful life and dreams of bounty and making memories in this house that they worked really hard to obtain. So it's kind of this sense of the American dream in a way, and we feel that her family might be blessed and that they should be blessed, as you know, every family hopes for. So I think that there's a lot of kind of to relate with on a universal level as well. But as a reader, I was really hopeful because of this family's love and the suspense that's built on their love. And when Charlotte's taken and the story betrays us and the rest is kind of doom, she remains the light in our hero, Arvin, and our kind of anti-hero, I guess, maybe. And the goodness in this character, I think, is, I hope, was passed on to Arvin.
Definitely. Eliza, let me bring you in. Relationship with Lenora. I mean, as Haley just mentioned, the story is heightened, and yet it felt like when I was watching the film, you know, one of the tragedies with Lenora is there were, possibly even still are, any number of real life Lenoras. I mean, these are the situations that young women were facing then, probably are still facing now. Tell me about how you kind of connected with Lenora and bringing, I suppose it's almost this tragic realism to the story.
Mm-hmm. I think that well, Antonio and I had a lot of conversations about Lenora, and ensuring that she is a fully fleshed out character, especially in the film world, where that can easily be skewed or miscommunicated, especially because she's so vulnerable and she really doesn't know any better in this situation, and to not have the luxury of prose to describe the psychological journey of what she goes through, achieve that through visual imagery and not kind of reduce her to someone who is stupid or I guess blindsided by it. I think there's a level of autonomy in what she does, and at some point, well, at least for me, playing the character, I felt that at some point in the story, she was aware of what she was doing and what this relationship with Tegan was, and that to me represented a kind of disillusionment with her own faith, and I guess the framework in which she lived her life before had been demystified by this sexual experience, this sexual awakening. And like Haley was saying, I think she's a common archetype, and what I really enjoyed about this character is that we were able to refute that in a way that was tasteful and really heartfelt, and yeah, it was very hard. It was very sad time playing Lenora.
But she's such a fascinating presence because, you know, the film is filled with these very kind of verbal characters, these very, you know, exterior extrovert characters, and Lenora keeps it all in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And you know, I guess trying to navigate this character within the limited time we were shooting was hard, and it was only like 10 days that I was shooting for, and you know, I've worked on other films and it's kind of known that the first week is always going to be a bit shit, and I basically had a week, so it felt pretty chaotic, but it was ultimately a really enjoyable experience, and maybe that whole idea of the first week of a film being shit and crazy is not a thing, but that's what I've been told before.
They call it the first pancake. You know, the first
yes.
shit.
But you ate it anyway.
Harry, let me bring you in. We've spoken a little bit already about the way so many of the characters exist in this kind of grey moral zone. You know, this isn't a story about heroes and villains. It's a story about messy people. We're all messy. But Roy feels particularly messy. So I wondered about your take on him as a character. You know, this from scene to scene, sometimes it feels like we're encouraged to see him as a villain and as a bad guy, and clearly he does this terrible thing in the middle of the film. But then he's also this very tragic figure, you know, and he's also a sort of victim of circumstance. So what was your relationship with Roy?
I think he's just such a tortured soul, isn't he, really? He's someone that needs, in order to operate in life, he needs to feel the presence of God. When he's in that presence, he's alive, he's kicking, he's you know, he's on top of the world. But when it wavers or when it sort of disappears, he becomes completely lost. And it was that kind of that contradiction that I really tried to sort of think about, and what it must be to sort of go between those two extremes very quickly and very rapidly. And so in terms of the morals of him, I don't think I mean, the thing that I kept thinking about with Roy was just the power of belief, and the fact that if he believed in this thing, and he believed this was the right thing, that would be the overwhelming thing that would sort of dictate his actions. So I never really thought about it in terms of right and wrong, but of course what he does is deeply wrong. So that was kind of my way in. And also looking at all these amazing, Antonio sent me these amazing clips of these snake handlers, and watching how the energy of these characters, and that was really sort of crucial in terms of Roy, this the frenzy of feeling close to God. And that was kind of, again, something that I thought was really important. But of course, if you go that high, the only way is down. So that's kind of how I thought he operated.
Sebastian, let me bring you in. I mean, one of the places that people will have seen you before is within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, I'm curious, both practically in terms of the shoot and also maybe in terms of the kind of the ideas that are within the story, you know, how different is a film like Devil All the Time? Or are there actually common threads between, you know, the Marvel films, you know, with what feel like these very kind of good guys and bad guys, and a film like Devil All the Time? Or are they very different things?
I think it's always different. You know, I think it always depends on the director, really. And, you know, like for me in the Marvel situation, you know, largely I'd been with the Russos, who had a very specific point of view and take on everything. And so, as did Antonio here. In terms of the scope and so on, perhaps it was different, you know, from a point of view of playing a recurring character to something that I was never, you know, that I've never really done before. Like, this was a very different kind of role for me to jump into, in terms of the world, which was so different from how I grew up or what I knew. And even just in terms of this character, like how it was more of like the challenge for me really was the physicality, I think, aspect of it, and really trying to go for, you know, for something else and something new that I hadn't tried. But, you know, Antonio and I think it's so important. That's where the director comes in, you know, the vision they have and how specific they are. And I'd always been a huge fan of Antonio's, and I knew from other movies of his that I'd seen that, you know, in our conversations that he knew very specifically kind of where to go with this thing and with this guy. And so I had a lot of faith in him and thus in myself because of that, to sort of just take some swings. But it's, yeah, I don't know. You know, it's hard to kind of say like, oh, how it is different in the sense of, I guess, more familiarity for me in this standpoint. But, you know, they're both kind of, for me, both experiences were very director's vision oriented kind of takes.
Sure. Pokey, I'm going to come to you. Listen, thank you for your patience as well. I know we've been here for some time. It kind of leads
getting better. I've been learning.
Good. It kind of introduces my question, really, because, you know, you're a musician by background, and, you know, you bring this incredible electric kind of energy to the film. But I'm curious about how that felt for you, because there's a lot of difference between live performance, you know, on stage, and movie sets, which can, by their very nature, be, you know, slow-moving places, you know, where not a lot seems to be happening for a long time. So how was that move from one to the other?
Well, in terms of long, slow moving, nothing happening for a long time. I have been a touring musician for a long time, so sure. Sitting in a van or in a bus or in a plane for a long period of time and just drooling, you know, up against a window, I'm used to that. Right. But I made a lot of buddies. It was nice. That was, you know, that's some of my favorite memories, just hanging out and shooting the shit and chain smoking with the cast and crew. My experience, I focused on, in terms of the role, his disability, though it was self-inflicted, the fact that he has no use of his legs, was a symbol for me of his repression, right? In this prison that he was in within his own body, his repressed homosexuality. But I don't know. He was a guy, I guess he's kind of a villain, but I don't see him too different than anybody else. I mean, we're all kind of the same in that we all want love and affection and acceptance. And when we don't get it, we go about we don't receive it. We go about getting it in beautiful, but sometimes very cruel and dangerous ways. So I think he's just looking for acceptance. He's just looking for somebody to love him, Harry. And so I really relied on Harry a lot, you know, because of the professional that he is, but also because he's my cousin. We travel around. That's what we do, and because I love him. Right. So, but you don't, you know, he hasn't been able to say that. So yeah. So I just want to say thanks to Harry one more time, and to everybody.
We've got time for one more question, really, which I'm going to put to Antonio, but anybody else is free to jump in. I mean, obviously, on one level, the film's a period piece, or it's two period pieces. It's about the 50s and it's about the 60s. But is this a film that's actually also timeless? I mean, is this a film which is also about 2020?
I think the questions of faith and the relationship between faith and violence, and the kind of madness that faith can lead to, and fanaticism. You know, people who abuse their power is timeless and universal. I think that to compare it to what's going on in 2020 is, you know, I think it's tricky. I think there are aspects of it that are definitely at play. I mean, I think there's the person in power is reflective of a certain kind of madness that's at the heart of America. Yeah, I mean, you know, we made the movie in 2019. And I wrote the script between 2015 and 2018, and the book was written in 2010 or 2011. So, you know, it's somehow, it is a story that's universal. It was written at a different time, but there's echoes of what's going on now, I guess.
Okay, well, listen, I think we're out of time. So what I'm going to do is wish all of you, for who this is morning, a good day. If it's evening where you are, sleep well. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, I've learned a lot as well. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Right.
Bye.